Welcome back to our mini series on Ayurveda. Um, at this point, I would like to ask Dr. Kesarkar about broader applications of Ayurveda. We normally tend to think of Ayurveda as a medical science, that it's something that we use for definition and understanding of health and disease and wellness. But what I have learned from you is that it is much more broader in its scope. And one of the things that interests me greatly, just because my specialty in cardiology is cardiac imaging, is the growth and the exponential use of artificial intelligence. And we are seeing that already in my field, where we are able to take millions of pixels of data and process it in different ways to understand um, a particular diagnostic modality, for instance, like CT scans or MRIs or echocardiography. And that is one application of artificial intelligence that I have seen and have been involved with in terms of research. So, can you tell us more about the application of Ayurveda and artificial intelligence?
Thank you, Kavita ji, for having me on your mini series. It's a, I won't say a tricky question, but very valid question because world is moving towards it. Technology is moving towards it, and the current crisis, what we are seeing, warrants that human to human contact interaction be as minimal as possible. I'm not saying that would be the norm, but suddenly the priorities have changed. A lot of things have changed on an individual level. Now, I won't say Ayurveda, I'll say Vedic sciences, but because we are understanding from a human point of view, I'll use the word Ayurveda because it affects our lives. So, the basic thing which I said in first of this series, the lecture, that Vedic knowledge comes from sound. Now, this is the first and the primordial foundation for artificial intelligence. How? Imagine a time there were no scripts. You can't write something, you can't record anything. Nothing was there. I wanted to pass an information to you. So the 53 letters, 49 letters of Sanskrit, they are combinations on different sounds. I'm talking slowly, in a medium tone and in a high tone. All this were categorized. There could be no tones, a pitch which is beyond these three pitches. And in that pitch, combination of that sound created the correct information which was passed on from a person to another person. Now imagine this codified information, this language, if we can program it to all the information of Ayurveda, to all the syndromes in a particular way, it leads to a base of artificial intelligence. Like imagine the power that this sound phenomics, the way I'm speaking to a machine, the way, the sound, because I said in Ayurveda there are three types of diagnostic methods in which everything comes. You're listening to a person, you're checking a person. Just imagine that I'm speaking to a machine, and just by listening to the modalities in my sound, the machine is giving me my previous history, this history, and future history. I know people who might be listening to me might find this a little bit incomprehensible, but this is true. There have been studies certain on Kirlian photography, on EEG waves. Now people with EEG waves, there are certain quantum physics experiments which are happening, that scientists are tapping into the EEG waves and they can recreate what you have seen from those waves 5 minutes back. Like I was watching a movie and the EEG waves are captured into a dark room. The scientists can recreate the data of what you were doing. We see that the neural networks are not exactly creating straight. They are rearranging every time I move my head like this, my world is rearranging itself. And this is happening at a very fast pace. These concepts have been mentioned in Vedic sciences in terms of Sukshma Indriya and Sthula Indriya. What your eye sees and what is recorded, you know, that dynamism is different. Tapping into the smallest parts of the brain. There can be a question, they can say, no, now because I know that modern medicine is doing all this research, I can correlate. But that is how the world is. How can I explain these concepts to someone unless and until there was, like you said, a randomized control trial or some data to ascertain these concepts? So I'm not trying to, catch the train where, we already know what is inside the train and what is inside, and I'm going and catching the train and I say, see, it is already written. I'm not saying that. I'm talking futuristic. I was the first person when I created my website. I created a website to propagate Ayurveda compound formulations. But I was pretty aware that, let us say I say the word Trifala. So Trifala can be spelled as Trifala, Treephala. There are multiple ways as per the accent. So if I created a normal search engine, no one would have got the result. But I created that search engine on Sanskrit phonetics. I said TR, the vowels, sound. So I got a combination of words that now if you insert any spelling mistake, still you will get the same formulation. You can say Google will do the same, but Google won't do the same with this classical formulations. With English, it can suggest you something if you make a spelling mistake. The same thing, you understand this codified information for diagnostic value. Everything is transmitted in the same form, in the Sanskrit verses in the same form. Still, there are people who are uttering the same thing and they're transforming. I'm not saying Ayurveda, Vedic languages. There are Vedic schools where youngsters are taught in a sound to sound transmission. Now imagine the power, a system, a codified system which is giving you everything of how the cosmos has evolved. It has got no theories out. In Vedic sciences, there are darshan shastras. You take any theory which is going to come, which is already prevalent, like the Big Bang or thread theory or oscillatory theory, you will find it in some of the darshans. So the point I'm here trying to make, that if we revisit these building blocks of Vedic sciences on which all metaphysical sciences, spiritual sciences are based, if we can understand their combination, if we can program them in a particular way to create this information, Ayurveda can give you much more diagnostic value. You talk to a machine, it can give you a lot of syndromes. You can just show a color of your urine, it can tell you a lot of syndromes. So this all things, if anybody who is listening to this and has done, educational Ayurveda, they know where I'm coming from, because every aspect of human body, the urine and everything, has been mentioned with various attributes of how exactly they lead to disease. The same thing is there in modern medicine, but we try to do it chemically. So we are trying to ascertain molecular chemicals, all the kind of microflora, and this is how imaging system is developing. You will have lots of CT scans from previous hundreds and thousands and millions of records. You will have structure of the heart. You will have the way the blood is flowing, how much the heart volume is, stroke volume is. And then the artificial intelligence will create a model and give you the probabilities. But this again is based on a data which is collected over a period of time by a machine which is learning. So that comes with machine learning. In Ayurveda, you can cut out machine learning. The data is already there. There is nothing more to add in it. It is already there. You just have to make sense of it. And I think if engineers, modern things, who are very good in Sanskrit phonetics, who put their mind in this way, if they understand this, they can create a fantastic diagnostic model, a quick acting diagnostic model, a quick acting prescription model, not necessarily herbs, it could be even chemicals, even to prevent a disease or to portray that where this makeup is going through and what kind of an interventions we are required to. And again, I'll come to one point. There was a time when we were discussing, I was also discussing that today you can see your gene and you can find out what kind of a disease you will get. It is also a kind of artificial intelligence. But can you account for accidents? Can you account for that one stroke which you might get when you're climbing the mountain and you get paralysis? Because the genetic makeup is not going to tell you that. It is an accidental thing. So it comes with limitations. But if we see, you have given my gene map, I know this diseases I'm going to get, this prevention I'm going to do. This is not the concept of Ayurveda. Ayurveda says that you're going to die. How much independence you want to keep, how much activities you want to do, what kind of a food you can naturally digest, what kind of a food you can, you won't digest. This all concepts, foundational concepts, are based in Ayurveda. Now imagine the same concepts of artificial intelligence in modern medicine, in Ayurvedic outlook, which is giving you more value for money. But because our sciences, Ayurvedic sciences, the books, the transmissions have not been passed on in that way. I'm not blaming anyone. It is because in India, when BMS syllabus was created, GFM was created, it was for us to get a job opportunity and practice it with licensing. So this kind of an approach is not there. We are still thinking of Ayurveda as something with nature, against chemical, something which is holistic, which has to come from within, which is divine. Of course, it is divine, everything is fine, but you cannot separate it from the whole cosmology where everything is there. There is origin, there is destruction, there is sustenance in chemicals, in physics, everything. And when we say cosmic, anything that is formed in cosmos has to come in manifestation. So again, I'll end this little bit talk. Hopefully, I made my point that artificial intelligence, machine learning, neural networks, a lot of things, Vedic sciences, the phonetics of Vedic sciences lie at the base of everything. If somebody, Sanskrit scholars, phonetic scholars, Vedic scholars can come together and create a neural map, create a programming language, it's very easy. You can program. In what happens, Sanskrit language becomes difficult to program because we don't have the machines. A processor, a bit processors which are made with prime numbers, the encryption, it becomes difficult. But with quantum physics, with quantum computers, which are a reality, I think this kind of a technology is going to usher us into the future. And there are certain countries who are still working on it. I do not have the data, but if you search at the right places, there are a lot of people working on Sanskrit, on quantum computing, and won't be surprised in future 15 years, 14 years, this forms the basis of how strong a country will be and what kind of a technology it uses.
Thank you so much for this overview about artificial intelligence and its potential use in Ayurveda, or actually the application of the Vedic knowledge in developing artificial intelligence. So, as you were speaking, I was remembering a study that came out recently in the last few months where there was a study in which people with atrial fibrillation is a heart rhythm problem, heart rhythm abnormality, and a lot of people go in and out of atrial fibrillation. And just by the application of artificial intelligence, it was possible to do a face analysis of somebody without even an EKG or any other diagnostic modality, to look at somebody's face and see if they were in atrial fibrillation or not. And these data were derived from, of course, as you said, by the compilation of data from thousands and thousands of patients that were going in and out of atrial fibrillation. And then there is the machine learning, and the machine learns these patterns and then is able to project past learning into future diagnosis. And how this differs from, the idea or the concept of artificial intelligence, with the application of the Vedic principles is truly fascinating. So, as you said, the most fundamental understanding here is that of sound and word, because anytime we are talking about sound and the contraction of sound into language or the word, and how that limits a particular science. Anything that is based on word is limited compared to that which is based in sound. And I have learned from you, of course, that it is only in Sanskrit, because it's phonetic, there is the entire range of sound is encompassed within the Sanskrit alphabet. So the idea that we could apply these phonetic principles of Sanskrit to understand or to apply this into diagnosis and the understanding of what is to come is truly mind-blowing for me, because, as you said, there are plenty of services now, such as 23andMe, where you can send a swab and get back results of your DNA, basically, and it'll tell you all of your personality characteristics, and then what time you like to go to bed and what time you need to wake up. And they're constantly doing this research through their very large databases, again through artificial intelligence and learning, in trying to predict what an individual with a particular genetic makeup is susceptible to. But again, whether having a gene for something is one thing, whether that gene is going to be expressed or not is another thing, and that is really difficult to predict because it is dependent on what we call epigenetics. So it's your whole lifestyle and everything else that goes on in your life that determines whether your gene for a particular disease, such as high blood pressure or diabetes or heart disease, is going to be expressed or not. So it's merely having a gene doesn't make you, doomed for the disease. There are many things we can do to prevent the expression of the disease, but whether these programs, such as 23andMe and others, many others, can predict these accidental things or, these susceptibilities to things that are unmeasurable are still not present. And so this is something that, we can expect, hopefully, as you said, over the next 15 years or so. And the possibility is very exciting that we could use the knowledge of Sanskrit and the magnificent phonetic basis of it to develop artificial intelligence. I hope you enjoyed this segment. Thank you.